Okay. So recording started.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, so let us discuss what are Linq operators, or you can say Linq methods, right? So whenever I'm saying operator and methods, so basically whatever the operation I'm going to do using two different approaches, right? Two different, as I mentioned in our last session, we can write the Linq query using method syntax, and we can also write the Linq queries using the query syntax, right? So basically, whenever I am using the Linq with method syntax, at that time, I will mention that it's a method. And whenever I'm writing the query using the query syntax, at that time, I will mention the same thing as the operator. Okay, I will show you practically. So what are the Linq methods and the operator, right? The Linq methods and operators are nothing but some extension methods, right? Everything. If you look at the Linq, every method that what we are going to learn, every method is an extension method. Yeah, can anybody tell me what is an extension method?
When you extend the like a default, like say like string, you can add more capabilities to
Exactly. So basically, if you want to create a new method, and if you want to access that method using an existing class, right, then you can go with the extension method. And in .NET Linq, right, every method that what we are going to learn, right, like select, max, sum, where every method what we are going to learn, every method is an extension method, right? How in which class they are extended? IEnumerable of a T class, right? So we will see this practically, and basically in LinQ, all the method are extension method, and using those extension methods, we can write the LinQ query. The LinQ extension method provide lots of useful feature. Lots of useful feature means what? Now, whatever functionality, right, we can achieve using a SQL language. In a SQL language, from one table, I can select all the data. I can select a few data. I can join two tables, select some data from one table, other data from another table. I can join two tables. I can join three tables. I can join five tables. I can group the data. I can sort the data in ascending order or descending order, right? I can filter the data by some conditions, right? We can do a lot of things on the SQL side, or on any database language, right? Similarly, most of the things, I cannot say all the things, but most of the things, whatever we do in in a SQL language, right, we can also achieve all those things in our .NET application, in our C# language, or in VB language, using the LinQ query. So using LinQ query, we can filter the data, we can sort the data, we can group the data, we can join the data, right? So most of the operations we can do on our .NET application, right? So basically, if you look at the different operator categories, right, you can see projection operator, right, ordering, filtering, set, quantifier, grouping, partitioning, equality, element, conversion, concatenation, join operator, and aggregation operator. So basically, you are going to learn means you will going to learn all these operators in detail. So let us start our discussion with projection operator. What is projection operator, and how you are going to work with projection operator? How many methods or operators are provided as part of a projection operator, right? Let us discuss all these things. But before that, or before understanding what are the projection operator, first of all, we need to understand what is projection. Projection means what? Now, projection means, suppose you are having say, okay, let me first explain you from the SQL server point of view, then I will explain the same thing from .NET point of view, right? Suppose you are a table, suppose you are having a table called student, and that table having 10 columns. Now I'm writing the query select star from student. So in that case, how many columns data it will retrieve? Guys?
All the columns.
All the columns data. Now I'm writing uh now I'm writing select column 1 comma column 2 comma column 3 from students. Then how many columns data it will return?
three.
3 columns, right? Now I can write select column 1 as some different name, column 2 as some different name. So in that case, it will return 2 column data, but with a different name. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Guys, give me one. So basically, you have the flexibility in the select clause. If you want, then you can specify all the columns. You can specify few column. Even though you can also specify some calculations. Calculations means what? Suppose you are having one column called salary, right? That salary column contains the total salary of the employee, and while retrieving the data you can specify in the column that salary divided by 2n as a monthly salary. That means you can also perform some calculation while retrieving the data, right? So in the same way, if you want to perform the same operation in Linq, you are having one data source, right? You are having one data source, you want to retrieve, and that data source in the sense in .NET might be you can consider one class, right, or one student class, and you are having one data source means a collection of student you have, right? Now the student entity or the student class having 10 properties. Now if you want, you want to project you want to project, or you can say you can select all the 10 properties to the output. If you want, you can select only few properties from the student class, right? If you want, you can also do some kind of operations, right, while projecting the output for, right? So basically projection means it is basically forming the output, right? Projection is nothing but a mechanism that is used to select the data from a data source, right? If your data source contains some data, right, then what is the form of the data, right? How many columns you want to select, whether you want to select all column or whether you want to select some column, or if you also want, then you can also do some kind of calculations while selecting the data. So you can select the data in the same form. So whenever I'm saying same form means what? Whatever the columns available or whatever the properties available in the class, i'm I'm selecting all the properties. That means if the data source I mean if the data source is a collection of student, I'm returning collection of students. It is also possible to create a new form of data by performing some operation on it. For example, your student entity contain one column annual salary, contain one column salary. Now you are dividing salary divided by 12, and you created a new column annual salary. Then in that case, if annual salary, that means you cannot use the existing student entity, right? Then for that purpose, you can create a new entity or you can create a new class, and you are going to project the data source data into a new form, right? Or it is also possible that if you do not want to, if you do not interested to create a new class, then you can also project the data to an anonymous type. You know what is anonymous type? Anonymous type means a type without having any name, right? So we'll see all these things practically. So in simple words, we can say that projection is an operation which converts an object into a new form which hold only those properties as per our requirement, right? So whatever the data our data source content, as per our requirement, we need to form the output, right? If we want, we can retrieve all the data. If we want, we can retrieve only few columns, few properties data. If we want, we can also do some kind of operation while retrieving the data. So basically, this is nothing but projection. Projection means projecting or selecting the data source data into a new form. That new form might be equals to the original form of data, might be equals to a different form of data. So I will show you example practically by taking different kind of examples, right? So then what are the projection methods or operators available in Linq? So basically there are two methods, or you can say two operators available in Linq to do this projection operation. One is select, another is SelectMany. So guys, whenever I'm using methods, whenever I'm saying select method means whenever I'm using this with the, whenever I'm writing the query using the method syntax, then at that time the select will be used like a method. And operator means what? Now, whenever I'm writing the same thing using the query syntax, then at that time I will refer to this as the operator, select operator and select method. So, but internally, whether you use these things and whenever you right click and go to the definition, then you will see that it is implemented as an extension method, right? So practically, I will show you both things, right? So don't be confused with the projection methods and the operators, right? So basically both are going to be same internally, and there is no preference difference whether you write the query using the method syntax or query syntax. right? Select operator or select method. Okay, so let us start discussing with this one. So basically there are two operators or two methods available in Linq to perform the projection operation. One is select and the next one is SelectMany. So let us start discussing the select operator or select projection method, right? The Linq select projection method or operator can be used to format the result of the query as per our requirement. So what is our requirement? Whether we want to return all the values, whether we want to return a single value, or whether we want to return a different class, right? Or whether you want to create a custom class, anonymous type, right? In which format you want to project the output? You want to project the data source. So that is basically, if you want to define, then that you can define by using the Linq select operator, right? As we know, select clause in SQL allows us to specify what columns we want to retrieve. Whether we want to retrieve all column or some of the columns, we need to specify in the select clause in the SQL statement, right? In SQL, we know whether you want to retrieve all columns or some column, that you can specify in the select clause. In the same way, the Linq select method also allows us to specify what properties you want to retrieve. Whether you want to retrieve all the properties or some of the properties, we need to specify those things in the select operator or in the select method. The standard Linq select operator allows us to perform some calculation also. Calculation, I mean what? Now while retrieving, while projecting the output, if you want, you can also do some kind of a calculations, right? Suppose there is two columns, first name and last name. You don't want two column in the output. You just want a full name. So you can also create a full name equals to first name plus last name by giving some space, right? Anything, any calculation you want while projecting the output, that you can also do. That is also what we are going to discuss. Now, let us discuss some examples so that you can understand this very easily. Let us understand the Linq select method with an example, right? So let us create a console application, right? Let us create one class called employee.cs. So already I have created one class. Okay, let me go to, this is my employee.class. And if you look at the code, then it's very straightforward, right? So it's having one class, having four properties: ID, first name, last name, and salary properties. And this class also having one method, that is get employees. And this method is going to return some hard-coded employee informations. In real time, you might get this data from a data source, right, from a database or from an API, right, or from an external application. But to simplify this, our intention is not API or a database. Our intention is Linq. So for that purpose, I have hard coded the data, right? So basically, whenever I call this get employees method, it is going to return me list of employees, and that's it. This is going to be act as our data source. So next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how you can use the project select method, right? Select method using both query syntax and method syntax, right? Simply. So this is the query syntax. So from emp in employee.get employee. So emp dot employee.get employee means what? This is nothing but your employee.get employee. So this is nothing but your data source. So this emp.get employees is nothing but your data source. From emp in employee. This is the standard query syntax for each employee in this data source. And then so from each employee in this data source means please project all the employees. So all the employees, right, all the data source data you can access by using this emp variable. And then select emp means in this case I'm retrieving all the employees in its what I can say, in its original form. But guys, one more point that you need to remember at this point, right, at this point it is just created the query. It is just created the query means the query is not executed at this point. So whenever I use this basic query method, right, inside what I can say, inside a for each loop, or if I write the toList method, then at that time only the query is going to be executed. For example, I have written the query like this: from emp in employee.get employees, select emp, and then I'm just writing .toList. So whenever I write a toList means this will execute this query, and whatever the data that is going to be written and that you can store here. But in this case, see what is the return type I'm storing this query inside IEnumerable of employee. But in this case, I can directly store that inside a list of employee, because at this point the query is executed. But in this time, but at this point, the query is just created, it is not executed. Right. So this is the query syntax. And if you want to use the method syntax, then simply employee dot get employees dot toList. That's it. In this case, this toList method will execute this query, right? And that is going to be, and once it executes, the output is going to be stored. Now you might be one question, sir, why you are not storing this information inside the list of employee? Why you are storing inside the IEnumerable of employee variable? The reason is IEnumerable is the super class of the list class. So it doesn't matter whether you use list of employee or IEnumerable of employee, because IEnumerable is the parent class of the list class. So a parent class reference variable can also hold the child class object, right? So in this case, it is returning list of employees that I can store inside IEnumerable of employee, because it is the parent class, right? Now let me show you this thing practically. So in this case, what is I'm doing? I'm just retrieving the data in its original form. Original form means I'm not forming any different kind. So in this case, whatever EMP is nothing but EMP structure is going to be the structure of this data source. What is the structure of this data source? The data source in this case, emp.get employee, it is going to return list of employees. So what is the structure of employee? Employee means it is containing 4 properties. So in this case, right, in this case, the structure is also going to be same. So this EMP is nothing but, you can say it's a student structure, right? What a student object, and then one by one each object you can access by using this EMP. So select EMP means it is going to return all the employees from this data source, and then I'm using this toList method means it is converting to I mean, at this point, toList method means the query is executed. Whatever the query it generates, that query is executed, and the data, right, is going to store inside this variable. Now you can access the value by using a for each loop, and the same thing, employee.get employees. So in this case, you can access all the employees, and as I mentioned here, so whenever you are creating the query, there are 3 things. What are the things? One is data source, another is condition, another is execution. So in this case, I do not need any kind of a condition. I want to select all the data. So you can write like this without condition. So this is nothing but your data source, and this is nothing but your execution. So in this case, this is not your data source, and you can say this is your query, and then you are executing the query, right? So in this case, you do not have that condition. Query, no condition, and execution. Right now, if you execute the application, then this EMP, in this case, the structure is actually the original structure of the data source. So original structure means, you can see I'm currently printing ID and name. So if you want, you can also print the other name. So ID, first name and last name. What other properties there? Salary. Okay, if you want, then you can also print the salary value, right? So now I'm printing the salary. So if you want, then you can also print the salary. And how you can print? Emp.salary, right? So you can also print like this. Right? You can print like this. Now your intention that I want to print the employees whose salary is greater than 8,000, right? How many employees are there? The salary is 6, 7, 8. So I want to print the employees whose salary is greater than 80,000. So if that is the condition, so currently there is no condition. If you want to print the condition, then you can write where operator. Then you can access the employee information by using the EMP variable or EMP object, emp.salary, and you can specify the salary is greater than 80,000. So in this case, it will only going to return the employees whose salary is greater than 80,000. Now you want to implement the same where condition here. Okay, so here you can write where method, right? Where method, and you can whenever you are using the method, then you have to specify using the lambda expression EMP such that EMP dot salary greater than 80,000. So that's it. So now, okay, so let me do the alternative. Here I'm writing the less than 80,000, less than equals to 80,000, and here greater than 80,000. Now I'm also printing the salary value here, right? So now with the changes, run the application and see. So currently our Linq query contains, say, you can see first three employees salary greater than 8,000, last three employees salary less than or equals to 8,000. So this is how you can write the Linq query. So this is my Linq query. So this query contains three things. One is you can say this is the data source, this is the condition, filtering condition, this is the projection, and this is the execution, right? So query, whenever you are preparing the query means you should have the data source. If you want, you can have some conditional statements, right? In this case, I'm writing this condition, then this is nothing but your execution, and this select that EMP, this is nothing but your projection. How many columns, what are the columns you want to retrieve, that you can specify here. So this basically your select clause, right? So here you can read select EMP from this data source where salary equals to this. So you have to read like this, right? Now, if you are good at SQL, right? So then you have to read select EMP. This is nothing but your column name. Select all the columns from this data source where salary is this, right? Is this good to read? So see, if you are very good at SQL, then you can read the SQL query like this. Select all the employees. So because here I'm not specifying any specific column, so select all the employees from this data source where salary is greater than 8,000. Right, so here you can also, and this is the this syntax is very similar to your SQL query syntax, and here it's very simple. Just you are using the data source, applying the where condition, and then you are executing the query. Clear, guys, or any question? Clear?
So yes, sir. So the to list, how can I compare the to list in SQL? Is that the run button?
Sorry?
The to list, you say the to list is the execution after you finish writing the syntax.
Okay, so how you can confirm that this is the query is executed, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let me remove this one. See, once I remove, it is giving me some error. So in that case, what I need to write here, I enumerable of query, right? And then what I'm writing I list of okay, I list of employee equals to, I'm writing this result equals to basic query dot to list, right? So I'm just putting the pointer here, not here. I'm starting the execution from here, right? Let me run the application. Right? So in this case, I'm pressing F10, right? I'm pressing F10. So currently, if this basic query contains the data, if this basic query contains the data, means the query executed, right? If it is not contains data, means the query is not executed, right? So if you go to here, what is this containing? Does it contain some data? So source is there. Yes, it is containing the data, but why? But it should not have, because in this case, it is not containing the data. Was. It is containing the data. In this case, you can see it is containing the result, the actual data 0, 1, 2. But in this case, it is containing the basic query, right? What is the basic query? System.linq.enumerable.where listener linq demo.entities, right? So you can see the difference. So here, what is basic query containing? And here, what is result containing? Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So this basic query, it is not containing the data. It is containing system.linq, enumerable, where listener, where list iterator, and this list demo.employee. But in this case, it is containing count 3. Right now, what I'm trying to do, I'm using the toList method here. Right. Once I execute the toList method, let me execute this once more. Function F10. Now it is containing the count equals to 3 or not?
Yes.
Right. So basically, this toList method means the query is going to be executed. Or if you have not used the toList method, then the query it is going to contain the query. Right. For example, so this is the basic query. Right. So now I have removed this. Right. If the query is executed, then what will happen? Then I cannot write these things now. Take one. So I want to return the top one record. So if I'm returning the top one record, then in that case, okay, I listed this should be list. Right. So in this case, see, if the query is already executed, then this should not be affected now. So, but you can also apply this kind of a filter because this is in memory object. In memory object means anytime you can apply any kind of filter. So basically, whenever you use this take method, right? So suppose in this case, I'm writing the take method here. So if I'm writing the take method here means the query is going to be executed at this point, right? So now if you run the application, then you will see that the query is going to be executed. So whenever you are writing the toList, the take method kind of method, right? That means the query at that point only going to be executed, right? So you can see it is going to contain. Oh, in this case, it is not executed. In this case, it is preparing the query. It is preparing the query means it is going to return the top one record. But whenever you use the query inside a loop, at that time it is going to execute, right? So basically, if you are using the toList, toArray, toDictionary, right, some kind of this kind of methods, or whenever you are using that variable inside a for each loop, at that time the query is going to be executed. So in this case, this is a mixed syntax. You can write the syntax like this, or you can also split the syntax into two statements that we have already discussed in our last session. So basically, if you are not writing these things, right? If you do not write this,
Actually, I'm having one question.
Yeah.
So at the moment we put the dot take of one, right? So in this time, the filter will be happen in the database side or in the client side.
See,
if we make in the single statement.
See, if you take this thing, take one, the filter is going to happen in the database side, right?
Okay, then what will be the use of I queryable? So even if I put I enumerable and I will put the take filter option in a single statement.
See, if you are writing the query in a single statement, there is no difference whether you apply I enumerable or I queryable. There is no difference. Both are going to be execute on the database. But if you are creating the script, right? If you are splitting the query creation statement into multiple times, then at that time, if you are using enumerable, then only the base query which you created going to be executed in the database. Further query which you created in a different statements, right? Those are going to be executed on the .NET application side, right? But if you use enumerable, then in that case, even though the query is created using multiple statement, the query is going to be executed on the database.
Okay.
Right? Clear?
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
And in this case, it is just creating the query. It is not executing the query. Whenever you use the toList method, toList means what? We are converting the output to some format. then at that time it is going to execute the query and it will convert that output to whether to a dictionary or whether to an array or whether to a list or whatever format you want. At that time it will form the output in that format only. So basically here is you have to read the statement like this. Why I'm showing this both syntaxes, query syntax and method syntax, because if you want to understand method syntax and if you want to know how exactly it is working, so query syntax will give you better idea, because query syntax is a very much similar to your SQL syntax. So in this case, you can read select EMP. EMP means all the employee properties, right? Select all the properties from the employee dot get employee data source where employee salary is greater than 8,000. You have to read like this. And the same thing it is also doing here. Now if you go to the where extension method, then you will see that this is one extension method, and this extension method you can access by using IEnumerable of a T source, right? So basically IEnumerable of T. Now if you select this one, right? Select, and if you go to the definition, then also this go to definition. Right, so this is not a method. So in this method, this is not taking me to any definition, but if you see this where, so it is taking me to the definition, this extension method, right? So you can see, even though it is also taking me to this IEnumerable of T source, right? So there is no difference whether you use this where or this where, both are going to be your extension method, right? So they are going taking you to the same method where the definition is defined. And this select, it's going to be your projection operator, right? And in this case, you can see here I'm writing select EMP, but in this case I have not written dot select anything, right? So basically what it means, in if you are selecting all the columns, then in that case you do not need to define the select class while you are writing the method syntax. But in the query syntax it is important, because you have to write the select clause if you want to retrieve some data from a data source, right? So in this case we are retrieving the data in its original form, which is not that difficult. But now we are going to discuss some different operation, right? Some different operation means how I can project a data to a different class, how I can project a data to an anonymous type, how I can select only a single column from all the available columns. That is what we need to understand. So let us discuss how we can select a single property using the select operator or method, right? For that purpose, what you need to do, see, previously we have written select EMP. EMP means all the properties available inside the employee class. But if I only want to select all the IDs, then you have to write select emp.id. I'm not talking about multiple properties. Currently, I'm talking about only one property. Multiple property, that is what we are going to discuss next, right? For now, I'm just selecting only the employee ID. So you have to write the query is similar to the previous one, except what? Now here I'm writing emp.id. Why? Because I only want to access the ID property of the employee. And the same thing, right? Previously, we have written, we have selected all the employees, but now I want to select, all the properties or all the columns of the employees, but now I only want to select the ID. So you have to use the select method, and using the lambda expression, you need to specify which property you need to retrieve. Whether you need to retrieve ID or salary or first name or last name, that you need to specify. So in this case, you can see, whenever I'm writing the toList method, directly I can store the result inside a list of int. And as here I have not applied the toList method, so I cannot store that result in toList method. But once you apply the toList here and here, then you can store the result inside a list of T or IEnumerable of T. There is no issue, because IEnumerable T is the parent class of the list class. Clear, guys? Okay. Let me put these things in the console or in Visual Studio and show you practically. So basically, in this case, I'm selecting the employee ID from the data source, and add toList I have written at this point. The query is executed, and I'm just and as it is returning a collection of IDs, so you can store that list of int. Then this is my for each loop, which I can access all the ID values. And this is my property syntax. So what I'm doing here, employee.get employees, and here I'm writing dot select. And what property you want to select? I want to select employee ID. So emp substrat emp.id. So at this point, the query is not executed. And whenever I access this variable, right, within my for each loop, at this point, the query is executed and you can see the data here. Right now, if you run this application, then you will see only only the ID column values. Right, so you can see the only ID column values. Right now, if you want to apply some kind of filter, yes, you can apply. How you can apply? So see, currently I'm not focusing on the filter because filter we are going to discuss next. Right, so basically without filter, let's understand. Let's go step by step, and so that you can easily understand the concept. So basically, in previous example, we have access all the properties of the employee. And in this example, we have access a single property of the employee. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next example, what we are going to discuss, how to select a view property using a Linq select operator or Linq select method. Right now, so see what is our requirement, right? So if I access this, if I access like this emp, or if I access like this, right? So if we access like this, select emp or emp substrat emp, then in that case, what it will do, it will retrieve all the properties data, ID, first name, last name, and salary. Now, what is my requirement? My requirement, I want to project the output into this employee class, but that employee class should contain the values for first name, last name, and salary, but that employee class should not contain the ID column value. Or it might be possible that I want to project the ID, first name, last name column values, but the salary column should not contain any value. What is the default value that should be stored there? Right, and in that case, once I project and once I fetch this ID, first name, last name, I want to store the data inside this same employee class. Is that possible? Yes, that is possible. Right? How? Let's see. So if you want to access the first name, last name, and salary information, and if you do not want to access the ID information, right? And if you want to project the employee table data, right? Employee collection data inside the employee type of variable, then you need to use the select new employee, right? Previously, what we have written, select emp. But now I'm creating a new instance, new employee, and here I'm storing first name, last name, and salary. And within this new employee, this employee class having first name, last name, and salary properties. And and I can initialize these properties by using emp. You know what is emp? Emp means it's a variable which can store all the property, all the collection values. In this case, employee.get employees. Employee.get employees contain how many records? Contains 6 records, right? Those six records you can access by using this emp variable, right? So this emp dot first name means it will access the first employee first name. Second time it will access the second employee first name, third employee first name, like this. And whatever the first name, last name, salary, it access one by one for all employees. That is going to be stored inside this employee object, first name, last name, and salary. And finally, those employees those data will be stored inside this variable, right? So this select query, currently what I'm showing here, it is going to contain the first name, last name, and salary column values, but not the ID column value. For the ID column, what is the default value of the data type that will be stored, right? This is how you can write select a new employee using the query syntax. So how you can read this? So you can read this, select first name, last name, salary from employees. Select first name, last name, salary from employee.get employees data source. This is how you need to read the query syntax, right? And coming to method syntax, it's very simple. So in this case, this is not a method. So I have not written this method single, that is open open and close a bracket, right? But in this case, this is a method. Select emp, select is a method. So I just write open and close curly bracket. And in between this, whatever code I have written, new employee and this open curly braces and close curly braces, that is going to be same as it is. But here EMP such that new employee and open close curly braces, whatever you can provide here. And whenever you are using method, you have to specify everything using lambda expression. And here I'm specifying using lambda EMP such that this EMP is nothing but your employee data you can access one. So this EMP you can consider it is equivalent to this EMP, and using this EMP we are accessing all the employees information. Similarly, using this EMP you can access all the employees data, and then and from this EMP variable you can set the first name, last name and salary properties. So let me take this code to the Visual Studio and show you the output. Right, so in this case what will happen, select employee first name, last name and salary from this data source. And how you are setting the first name, last name and salary values? By using this variable, because this is the variable which can access all the employees data. And then I'm printing the first name, last name, salary here. And coming to this part, this is one method. And whenever you are using any method, right, then you have to use using the lambda expression. So EMP start, I want to form a new employee object, and inside that employee object I'm setting the first name, last name and salary properties, and I'm getting the value from this EMP, right? So in this case you can also and in this case we are projecting the data into this type, so you can store the output inside a variable of this type. So you can see EMP. Right, now run the application. You can see the output as expected. Clear, guys?
So just one doubt here, like when we are querying the data, along with that we are creating the instance of employee and we are assigning the extracted data into that property, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically here we are creating, so see we are accessing the first employee and we are storing that employee information by creating a new instance. Second time it is accessing the second employee information, a new object will be created, and inside that new object it is assigning the first name, last name and salary values. Once all the employee information are accessed, that means if 5 employees are there, then 5 instance will be created, and those 5 instance we are just assigning to this way output, right? So basically you are just projecting the output, right? In this case, instead of an instance, yes, we are creating an instance, but technically you can say we are projecting the employee information into this type, right?
Okay, so this enumerable of employee, which will store the list of all the employees with their
No.
details extracted.
No, and that is what I'm saying again and again. So in this case, it is only going to contain the query. See, in this case, whatever we have written, right, those are going to be converted into some format, right, based on the data source. If this is a database table, so for example, if you are using context class, right, context dot students, right, then in that case, it is going to fetch the data from where? Suppose you are using an entity framework. In entity framework, you are having from the database. Then from the database means what? Now in that case, it will create a SQL query by taking this, and that SQL query is going to be executed on the database, right? So basically, this form is nothing but your query creation statement. Query creation statement means what? Now, based on the data source, the respective provider will come into the picture and will form the query, right? If it is a XML document, something is going to be happening. If it is an SQL Server database, something is going to be happening. If it is Oracle database, some different thing is going, some different query is going to be happening. If it is an in-memory object, then some different thing is going to be happening. right? So in this case, we are not doing anything. We are just preparing the query, and this query, right, whatever I'm preparing here, it is not going to be vary from data sources to data source. It doesn't matter whether you use the context class student or whether you use the in-memory object like employee.get employees, or whether you use some XML documentation, right? Doesn't matter. The query is going to be same. In this case, it is just preparing the query, right? So for example, okay, let me show you this thing also by the running mode. So, right. So in this case, see what is containing. It is containing the data or it is containing the query.
Query only.
Sorry,
It's only containing the query.
it is containing the query. So don't think that it is execute and it stores the data inside this. So it is containing the query, and this query, the .NET provider will execute on a data source. And this query, it is going to execute on this data source. And when it is going to execute, when you use the toList method or whenever you use this query inside this for each loop. And once it execute, then only the data is going to be retrieved, right? So now, for example, if I use the toList method here, right? Once I use the toList method here, then let's execute this statement once more, F10. Now you can see it is going to contain the data. Why? Because the query is executed now. So again and again, I'm saying this is nothing but your query generation statement, and this is .toList. It is nothing but your execution statement. And how it is going to execute, that is completely depend by the you can say Linq provider, right? And we do not know whether this is the data source, which is a in-memory object, which might be a database object, right? Which might be your XML document. So anything it can be, right? And based on the data source, the appropriate query is going to be executed, right? So in this case, you can see this is the query. What this query is generated, which is going to be understood by the .NET I mean the Linq provider, which is going to execute on the in-memory object. But the same query you cannot execute on the database. For database, if the data source is a database, then for this same script, right, whatever the statement you have written, for the same statement, a different query is going to be generated, which is going to be executed on the database, right? Again, if the database is SQL server, then the query is going to be some different one. Rather than if the database is Oracle, then a different query is going to be generated, right? So you cannot predict what query exactly. It is completely decided by the Linq provider based on the data source. And whenever you execute this statement, once the execution is done, then whether it is a in-memory object or whether it is a SQL server, context class, entity frame, or whatever, the output it is going to be set. The output it is going to be set. Clear?
Yes.
Right. So this is how you can project. But now you might be up one question. Sir, why I'm going to store? What is the need if I'm using employee? Then why I'm going to store? Because in this case, even though the ID column value we are not setting, but while accessing, right, we can still access the ID column value. And in that case, it is going to show me the value 0, right? For example, you can also access like this, emp.id, right? So you can also access like this. So in this case, you will see ID value is going to be 0. So ID value is 0. Is not it make confusion to you? Yes, it is making confusion. So we are thinking that it is not accessing the ID value. Then if I am not using ID value, then why I'm going to use this employee class? So for that purpose, what you need to do, you need to create a different class. Okay, let me create the different class, employee basic info, right? So I'm creating a different class, employee basic info. And inside this class, now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to use the employee class here. Rather, I'm going to use the employee basic class. Once you write employee basic class, then you have to specify employee basic. Employee basic here, right? So with this change, now you try to access the ID value, you will get some kind of error. So now you can see I can project the data into the same type, or I can also project the data into a different type as per our requirement. Now, this is the same example as the previous one. The only difference is that in previous example, we project the output to a type which is the same as the type of the data source. But now we are projecting to a type which is a different one than the data source type. Clear, guys?
Sir, just one question. Like, in the same way, new employee, if you assign the value ID emp.id to the ID of the property, then it will appear. No?
Yes, no issue. So if you are writing this, suppose what it means, see here you want to assign the ID equals to emp.id, right? That will be fine. Here you can access the ID value, right? Here you can access the ID value. That is absolutely. So if you are able to access the first name, last name, salary, then why not ID? ID you can also access, right? Now run the application, then you will see that ID value will be there, right? Clear? And if you are accessing, then do you think that the need of this is required? Why? You are storing the ID to ID, first name to first name, last name to last name, salary to salary. Then why I'm going to use this? Instead, what I can do, I can simply write EMP. This is going to be better, right? Clear? And here I'm projecting the employee information to a different type. Clear, guys? Or any question from anyone? So you can select the same type using this, right? If you want, you can also project to the employee type like this. There is no difference between this and this example. You can project to a different type, right? You can project, you can only fetch a single property value. That is also possible. Clear, guys?
Yes, good.
Okay. Now the next thing is that suppose do you think that it is a very good idea to create a type for this right now? What? Okay, let me show you one thing. I don't want this ID, right? But I don't want to create this object. Then how I can do this? So simply remove this. So once I remove this, then what it will become?
Anonymous method.
It becomes one anonymous method. So in that case, now instead of this employee basic info, I can write this. So whenever you are using anonymous method, the data type must be var, right? So now if you do not want to create any type, right? You do not have this employee basic info, and you are creating a type like this. So you can write like this. So here you can see it is saying whatever the property name you are fetching, and you are creating a new property with the same name, so it is not required. So you can simply ignore this. That is also fine. So it is not a error, but you can simplify like this. The same thing, if you don't want this thing, you can simply remove this thing. It is also going to create the type with this first name, last name, and salary properties. And here you want that ID value. So you can also write emp dot, right? So basically you are having many options. You can project the data to the same type, to a different type, to an anonymous type, and all the three options I have shown you. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right, this is important, because whenever you are going to work with the real-time application, people are getting confused. Sir, what is this select new? What is this select new? I mean select new, and what is this select employee? So people are getting confused only. That's why I've shown you all the three approaches. So you can use the same type, you can use a different type, even you can also use an anonymous type. Clear, guys? Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, what is
So,
our intention?
for clarity, like for like a real-time project, is it just better to create like a type rather than an anonymous method, so it'll be easier to kind of just go through?
Sorry.
I'm saying that in a real-time project, would it just be better to create a type rather than an anonymous method? Just to be easier to read it.
Basically, in real-time application, you should create a different method. So I generally prefer this one, right? So I should basically prefer this one because if I use this employee basic info, right, then what will happen? That in that case, I need to specify this. I know what are the property name, right? If I mismatch, then I will get some compilation error, right? Like this. Even though with the anonymous type, you will get the same issue, but I generally prefer to use the naming. I mean, create a different class and project data to that class. I generally prefer this one. This will make your intention clear. What is the data type, you know, and if you are using anonymous type, you do not know what is the type. Right, so I generally prefer to use this approach. But if you use anonymous type, then also it is fine. But preference wise, there is no difference. But I generally prefer to use because I don't like that anonymous kind of thing. Anonymous means what? Unknown. Why if I can write the things by knowing, then why I should go with the unknown or by doing some unknown things, right? So I can go with this one. Clear? So it's completely depend on you if you go with. Hello?
I'm not able to hear properly. Is it the case with only me or?
So guys, is my voice is audible to all of you or he is having only issue?
It's fine.
You're clear? I can hear.
I can hear you.
Okay, so can you just reconnect? Okay, so this is how. So basically three options are there, and I generally prefer to use this option. This will make your intention clear. What are the properties available and what are the property value you need to set. And if you go with anonymous type, that is also fine, but it will not clearly give you an idea what are the properties available. And if you see, if in this case, if you use this property, then you can go and check, yes, I need to set the first name, last name, and salary. But in this case, if you forgot to add this one, right, then it is also fine. But later somewhere you will get this error. Right, so you forgot, you will get this error, right, like this. So it's completely different. So whichever approach you want, you can go with this anonymous type or with this named type. Preference wise, both are going to be same. Clear?
I'm having a question actually.
Yeah.
Can you move on to the employee class?
Yes.
Let's say in this employee class, we have one of the navigation property considered as an teacher course. So whenever I was trying to create an object for an employee class, it will allocate the memory location for the course also.
So you mean to select? Yes.
Okay, let's say here we have a course. It is a navigation property of an employee class.
Yeah, I understood your point. So let me create public class course having some properties, right? Let me assign some public integer ID. Let me give only one this property, right? That doesn't matter, right? So
okay,
and here you are creating public for equals to get comma set, right? So in this case,
but my intention, I want to create object for the employee class, not in a course. In the link queue, so where you have made a select new of the employee class.
Exactly. So whenever you are creating an instance of an employee class, right? Then in that case, you attend our basic sessions.
Basic section in the sense which session? I was in the middle actually.
Actually,
No, I was started from my ADO dot.
Yeah, so basically you have watched our C# basic concepts videos.
No, sir, not it.
Yeah. So basically what will happen in this case, right? So one, this will be your object, right? Inside this object, the memory allocation will be done. The memory allocation will be done for all the properties as well as, right? So in this case, this is employee, right? So you are creating an instance of an employee, right? emp equals to new emp, right? So in that case, okay, so let me do one thing. Don't waste other people's time. Once the class completed, I will explain this memory architecture part, right? How exactly the memory
Yes, sure.
architecture is done, because it is not related to Linq, right? So if I'm explaining this concept right now, it will be a time waste for other people. So once the session completed, wait, and I will explain the memory architecture, right?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So guys, you understand these three approaches?
Clear.
Yeah. So
Yes.
now, as I mentioned, so while projecting the output, or while who is on mute, right? So while projecting the output, it is also possible to do some kind of operations, right? Operations in the sense, currently it is containing the salary column, right? Now you want to formulate annual salary equals to salary into 12. Now it is having two columns, first name and last name. I don't want two columns. I want a full name column. Is that possible? Yes, that is possible. But where I will do these changes? While forming the output. In the select clause, I need to provide these things. So in the select clause, so let me go with the anonymous type. And instead of first name, I'm creating the column name as full name. And in full name column, what I'm writing employee first name plus giving a hyphen, or not hyphen, just a space, and I'm writing employee last name. So this is not required. And here I'm writing ID, emp.id, right? And salary, I'm making this as annual salary, and annual salary is nothing but whatever salary multiplied by 12. So this is how I'm forming the output, right? So not question mark, right? So this is my things, right? In this case, now I can access full name, I can access full name, I can access ID, and I can access annual salary. So this is in query syntax how you can in this case you can see I'm processing, I'm doing some calculation while in the select class, and it is also possible in SQL Server, right? In SQL Server, if you want to merge two columns, you can write select first name plus last name as full name, and if you are having salary, you can write a salary into 12 as annual salary. This is possible in SQL. That is also possible in Linq. In the while projecting the data, right? While projecting the data, you have to provide the operations. Whatever operation you want, you can perform, and once the operation is performed, you can assign the output to a property. So that this is how you can merge first name and last name, and you can store the result in full name. And if you want to do the same thing is also happening here. So right, just copy this code and paste it here. Right, you are accessing the data using emp.first name last name, and emp.id annual salary is this, right? So now you can also copy these things and paste it here. So in this way, you can form the output by doing some calculation at runtime, right? Now emp id, full name, salary, so everything you can access. Any question from anyone regarding this? See, so this is the employee which can access all the employees and all the properties. So emp.first name plus emp.last name. So employee first name, last name, it access and store inside this variable. emp.id it access, store inside this variable. emp.salary it access, multiply by 12. That will become the annual salary and store here. And finally, and it's an anonymous method, so you can access, you can do. So if you do not want anonymous method, right? So let me do changes to this employee basic info. I'm making this as a full name, right? I'm making this as ID. ID is integer type, right? And I'm making this as annual salary, right? I'm making this as annual salary, right? So now if you want, then you can go with this also. That is also fine. There is no issue, right? So now run the application and see the output. See, you are getting the output as expected or not. So this is how you can do some calculation while projecting the data. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right. So I'm taking more time and explaining the concept because this is important, right? Once you understand the select clause and select many, you can understand one important concept you understand, because if you go and check any real-time project, any real-time application, then you will see this kind of things. And you should not be confused, sir, why they are using a new operator only, why they are specifying the type. Sometimes they are not specifying anything, right? Then what is happening internally that you need to understand, right? This is how you can access the data, right? How to select data with index value, right? So see, one more thing that guys you need to understand, while accessing the data, right? So internally what Linq will do, it will give one index value to each record. Index value to each record. That means currently this employee table having how many records? 6 records. So it will provide index value 0 to first record, index value 1 to second record, and index value 5 to the last record. Because as we know in .NET, everything is zero-based index, right? So suppose you are doing some kind of a filtration, right? And after doing the filtration, right, you got only 3 records, or you got only 5 records, right? Then what is the index position of that record in the data source, right? That is what, if you want to access, then you need to use the other overloaded version of the select method, which takes the index as a parameter, right? So let me show you how you can do this. Right? So you need to understand this code. So get employees dot select. I'm passing value and index. So in this case, what is value and what is index? So this value, it is nothing but your employee data, right? So this value is nothing but your employee, and index is nothing but the index position of that employee, and I'm projecting that to that same value and index. I'm accessing all the values and index. Then I'm projecting the data, right? So here, and you can see from this, you can access the employee dot index position, right? And employee dot value dot first name, employee dot value dot last name. Now you might be one question, why I cannot access the things directly, right? You cannot access the thing directly. Why? Because inside this employee, from employee we are using select and we are using value. That means that employee information now it is storing inside this value. So any employee information you want to access, you cannot access directly. If you want to access, then you need to access via this value. I know this will make you a little confused at this moment, but don't worry, we'll understand these things again in detail once we start discussing the, what I can say, the joining concept, right? In joining concept, you will understand, you will get a very good or very clarity related to this. But now you need to understand this employee that index you can access, right? And employee that value you can access like this, right? So basically, whatever the data we are projecting to here, and from here you can access this value is nothing but, say, in this case value is nothing but your EMP you can consider, and index is nothing but your index position of the employee, right? So if I want to, currently I cannot access this employee data directly, because in between employee and our projection there is something different. So this statement is there. So this statement means employee dot value dot first name, employee dot index, this will give you the index position, employee dot value dot first name, employee dot value dot last name, employee dot value dot salary. This is how you can access the index position of the employee. And using method syntax, it's very simple. What you need to do, you will select method, pass two parameter. First one is employee, second one is index. I'm projecting to this, projecting the output to an anonymous type. And simple index, it's nothing but the index position, and employee dot first name, employee dot last name, and employee dot salary. So in this case, I can feel this method syntax is very easier than this query syntax. So sometimes you will feel the query syntax is difficult to understand. Sometimes you will see that what I can say, the method syntax is difficult to understand. Sometimes query syntax you can easily understand. Sometimes method syntax you can easily understand. But for now, you can understand this thing easily until and unless we are discussing the joining concept. But now you can forget about this query syntax, focus on this method syntax. So inside this method syntax, you can see the select method. Previously, we are passing only the employee object. Now I'm passing employee and index, right? And then I'm to this lambda expression, I'm passing both employee and the index position of the employee, and I'm creating an anonymous type. Why anonymous type? Because we have not specified the name. But if we want, then you can also create a what I can say, you can create a new, if you don't want to use anonymous type, then also it is possible to create a type. For example, I'm taking this index position. I'm going to this one. I'm providing this as the index position, right? This is full name and this is salary. So I can simply use this employee basic info here, right? So what is the salary? So let me take this one and go to here and put this as salary. So I can write like this. So it's completely depend on you whether you want to go with a anonymous method or a named method, right? But in this case, you need to use the other overloaded version of the method, which takes two parameters. So one is the employee object, and in the second one is the index position of that employee, right? So now, if you run the application, then you will get the data as expected in both the scenarios. Right, so 0 1 2 3 4 5 6, 0 1 2 3 4 5 6, right? So now what I'm trying to do in this case, okay, let me give this as 5,000, give this as 4,000, give this as 3,000, right? So I'm going to apply some kind of filter. So this is 0 1 2 3 4 5. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm applying some filter. So to apply the filter, where condition is there, where EMP such that EMP dot salary is less than equals to 5,000. What is that value? 50,000. So I have written this thing and then I have tried another dot here, right? So now you will see, okay, let me comment these things which will make you confused, right? Now run the application. See 0 1 2 index position 0 1 2. So whatever the data it is returning, what is the position of the data? Currently it is returning three column, three records. So record means the position is going to be 0 1 2, 0 1 and 2. So basically, if you are fetching some data, right, and you do not, if you want to provide some increased incremental identification to the record, right, then you can use this index position. But for me, I never used this index position in any of my real-time application because the requirement is not come. So most of the time we are working with the database, and whenever we are working with the database, there is the primary key column or identity column is there, which will give you the unique number, right? So for that purpose, we do not need this one. But if you want to provide some indexing position number, right, and if you want to provide some kind of paging concept, right, then you can use this index position. In our coming session, we will also discuss how to implement paging nation using Linq. At that time, you will get more clarity. But for now, as we are discussing the select, so you have another overloaded version where it will give you the index position of the element, right? And index is always zero based, so and always increased by 1. So currently, you can see the position is going to be 0 1 and clear, guys.
Clear.
Yeah.
Right. So this is one of the projection method, and the next one is SelectMany, right? The next projection method what we are going to discuss is SelectMany. So this is select, and now we are going to discuss SelectMany. So what is SelectMany method? The SelectMany method in Linq is used to project each element of a sequence or a collection or data source to an enumerable of a t type. So, and then flatten the resulting sequence into one sequence. To understand this, what I can say, so this is my collection, right? So this is my collection, or you can say this is my sequence, which contains a list of a string. So which contains string data. So that means you can say this is containing string data. So what this SelectMany method will do, it will select all the elements of the collect sequence and then flatten into one sequence. What it means? It means now the sequence contains how many elements? Two elements. One element contain Pranay and another element contain Kumar. So if you consider this, this is a string and this is a string. So basically list of string. List of string means string is nothing but your what I can say, it's a collection of a character. So basically in this case, it will return the result as I enumerable of a character, I enumerable of a character, where it is going to contain the data like this, right? So basically it is going to contain the data like this. So Pranay Kumar. So basically whatever the sequence contains two strings, so it will combine both the strings and it will give you the result as a sequence of a character, right? That is what he is saying here. So what it means, the SelectMany method is used to project each element of a sequence. So each element of a sequence or a collection or a data source to an enumerable of t. So in this case, the sequence contains two elements. So the sequence contains two elements, right? Then it will project each element to a sequence to an enumerable of t type. So each element to an enumerable of t type. So in this case, the t is going to be character. So in this case, it is a character of collection of character. It is collection of character. So it will combine both the strings and it will project to the output as a Pranay Kumar, right? So that means the SelectMany method combines the records from a sequence of results and then convert into one result. If this is not clear at the moment, don't worry. We'll see, we'll understand this with an example, right? Let me let me take you to the Visual Studio and explain you this concept. Right now, I'm using the SelectMany method and I'm providing X substat X means whatever the element, I'm accessing all the elements, right? So this is the name list. This name list or this sequence contains two elements, right? So two elements means it is a sequence, it is a sequence, right? So this sequence contains this is a sequence and this is also a sequence, right? So what this sequence contains, this is a collection of character, this is a collection of character. So this SelectMany method, what he will do, he will combine this sequence with this sequence, and once it combine, it will form a single sequence, and that sequence data you can access here, and it will project this to a collection of character, because this is a collection of character, this is a collection character, combining both will also form a collection of a character. So it will, in this case, it will project the output to enumerable of a character. And then you can access each character from this sequence, and then you can see. So in this case, don't think that it is giving you Pranay Kumar. It will give you P as a character, R as a character, A as a character, each element as a character, right? So now if you're on the application, then you will see this. Right? Pranay Pranay Kumar, right? That means that I'm using right method. So if you use right line method, then you will see that. Otherwise, if you use the toList method here, if you use the toList method also, then you will understand these things, right? So right? So you can see this is name list content 2, right? Then go to the next. So this method syntax contains 12. Why 12? Because this sequence contains 7 character and this sequence contains 5 character. So combining these two sequence, it is going to be 12 characters. So the count content 12 elements. Clear, guys? So basically, you have to understand what is this sequence contents. This sequence contains 2 strings. So this means it is going to convert that string into independent characters. If this is not clear at the moment, let me give you another example. You will understand that example using better, right? So, and guys, this is method syntax, and there is no query syntax, right? There is no SelectMany operator available in .NET, right? But for that purpose, you have to use multiple from clause, from str in name list, from cs in str. That means whatever name list content to string that you can access each string. Then from each string, I'm accessing all character, and then finally I'm returning all the characters. This is how the query syntax you can form for the SelectMany, right? There is no SelectMany method or operator available in query syntax, but you can form that using a multiple from clause, right? From str in name list. Currently name list content to element, so you can access both the element using str. From each element, I'm accessing all the character, and finally I'm selecting the character. That means total how many characters are available in both the in the sequence that will be written by this, right? So if you even if you run this application, you will also get the same output. So you can see the output is like this, right? So if you want to get better clarity, then we need to understand these things with some complex data type, right? So this is a string data type and it's very straightforward. Now let me give you this example with a complex data type, right? So I'm having one student entity. Right, I'm having one student entity. You can say ID, name, email, and here I'm having one list of string programming, right? And here I'm get student methods, and in this case, while creating the data, you can say ID, name, email, and programming. It is nothing but a collection of strings, right? So this is the collection. So but guys, remember in our previous example, we have written these things. List of string. Okay, let me copy this one also. I'll show you the difference, right? Then I'm just right. So what is my requirement? If you go to the student entity, right, then you will see that there are 4 student entities, and each student entity taking some classes, right? This student entity taking some classes C#, Java, C++, another student taking classes on WCF SQL Server C#, another student taking class on MVC Java Linq, another student taking class ADO.NET C# and Linq. So now what is my requirement? So in previous example, if you see, if I'm using SelectMany on this list of students, so what you will return? You will return the characters, the collection of characters. Because why? Because in this case, the collection is a list of string, right? But now if you go to student, so this is my collection. It's a collection of student. In this case, it is not a collection of string, rather it is a collection of students trying to observe the things. So in previous example, it is okay. Okay, in previous example, it is that collection of strings, right? You can say this is one string. So here it is a collection of string, but in this case, the data source is a collection of string. This is the data source, right? This is the data source. But now the data source is not a collection of string, but rather now the data source is a collection of what? Student, collection of a student. So in this case, as it is a collection of string, so he can access individual, he can join the value of the elements, right? He can join this value with this value. But now, as it is a collection of students, if we apply, right, if we apply the SelectMany method on this property, then what he will do, he will, in this case, he is having 1 programming, 2 programming, 3 programming, 4 programming. So it is going to join this programming, this programming, this programming, and this programming. Joining individual programming means what? Joining the values. So this string value with this value, with this value, and with this value. So now don't consider that he is going to create a collection, he is going to create the sequence as a I enumerable of a C, I mean I enumerable of a character. Rather, now he is going to create the sequence as I enumerable of a string, because here the collection is not string. Here the collection is list of student, and as part of the student, string is a property. But in this case, this is not, this is the collection of string, and within string, the string is a collection of a character, right? So in this case, he is joining individual, he is creating the sequence by taking individual element of the each sequence element. And in this case also, he is creating the sequence by taking the individual element of this programming property, right? And individual element in the sense, this is one element, this is one element, and or everything what you can see is nothing but one element. So what is our requirement? Our requirement is to create a sequence which should contain all the courses or the programming or the technologies which all the students have taken, right? If that is our requirement, then how we can achieve this? So basically we need to achieve something like this, right? So how we can do this? For that purpose, right, we need to modify the code as follows. See here you can see get students. I'm writing SelectMany, and to this SelectMany method I'm providing std.programming. It is a property. And if you remember, right, okay, let me forget this. Let me remove this. So once I remove this, then you will see that one compilation error. Why one compilation error? Because it is returning what? The SelectMany method, in this case, returning I enumerable of string. I enumerable is the parent class. So the parent class object you cannot store on the child class. So if you want to use, then you have to use I enumerable of string, right? And then if you use the toList method, then that's fine. That is going to be converted to toList. Similar, this is one approach. And the second approach is that from student in student.getStudent. First of all, select all the student from the data source. Then from all the student, you need to select all the programming. And once the programming is selected, then select the program. That means now the program is going to contain all the programming. So all the programming means what? All the programming means for student 1, this is the value, for student 2, this is the value, for student 3, this is the value. So all the values are going to be combined together to form an I enumerable of string. Right now, if you run the application, then you will see the output as expected. Right? See, C# Java, C++, C# MVC Java, C# Linq, like this. Clear, guys? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but if you look at this thing, there are some duplicate elements. C# is say 1 time, 2 time, 3 times. Java is 1 time, 2 times, like, right? So some duplicate elements are there. And if you want that, I only want to know the unique subject or unique courses which has taken by the student, then how I can? Any idea? So for that purpose, you need to use the distinct method, right? So you need to use the distinct method, right? So if you remember in SQL Server, we are having some distinct clause, right? Suppose there are 2 employees with the same idea and you want to select the only unique names, right? Or unique IDs, then you have to use the distinct operator in the select clause, right? So similarly, there is also a distinct method available here, and there is no such a distinct operator available in a query syntax. So what you can do is you can go with the method syntax like this, right? Once you use these things right now, run the application and see the unique values you will get. Again, what is this distinct method? What are the overloaded version? What comparer it used to check the uniqueness of the element? Everything we are going to discuss in our coming session when we discussed this distinct method in detail. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Sir, one question.
Yes.
So, what is the like main purpose of using the SelectMany? Is it just to
Yeah, see,
combine these?
I'll give you an example. Suppose there are 5 students, right? Or you can say your database contain 100 products, right? And out of 100 products, few customer buy some products. It's possible that one customer buys 3 products, another customer buy 3 products, but it's possible that the customer one which buy 3 products, the same product might be bought by the second customer. But you just want to know which are the product which are sold, right? You want to display the products which has been sold to the customer. Then in that case, you just need to know show the product name, and you have to provide the unique product name. Then then how you can do this? Then for that purpose, you can use SelectMany. Clear?
Okay, so this is just used to extract all the values from
Yeah,
the
exactly. This is
collection and concatenate. Right?
exactly. So
It is.
in this
It will
case,
not give the actual results of the query, like how SQL query will give.
no,
Like
this is
just to concatenate the. If it is
exactly.
string, it will concatenate as character. If it is object, it will concatenate as strings.
So basically,
Uh,
basically, it's depend on the collection. What is the collection? See, in this case, okay. So if I'm creating the sequence like this, see, if I'm creating the sequence like this, so this is one sequence, and in this sequence, right? Okay, let me also create the query for this one. Copy paste the code. I am doing right. Right. See, in this case, so this is my collection. So from this collection, what it is selecting? It is selecting Pranay and Kumar. Yes or no?
yes.
This Pranay, it's a string, and this Kumar, it is also a string. Then I'm writing from CH in str. Str means what? So whatever this sequence contains, I'm selecting all the elements, right? So what is the sequence contents? The sequence contains one string. Selecting all the string means what? It's a collection of characters. So you are just fetching the individual characters, and then you are just returning all the characters from both the sequence, right? So in this case, what is this data source contents?
Objects,
List of students, right?
students.
Right. And from this list of student, if I'm writing http.programming, so what it will return me?
It will list of strings that are there in that.
List of strings. Then I'm selecting this program means whatever the string written from student 1, it will merge with student 2, it will merge with student 3. Yes or no? But in this case, it is returning me individual character. In this case, it is returning me individual string element. Clear? So in this case, std.programming for student 1, how many programs are there? 3 programs are there. So it will flatten these to create a sequence of a string which contains 3 elements. For student 2, it is create a sequence of the string which contains 3 elements, right? Like this. So in this case, it is flattening, it is creating, it is a string. So it is, I mean, you can see how we can reduce that sequence into subsequence. So in this case, collection of string means, a string means it's a collection of character. So in this case, it is a collection of string means individual, it's nothing but a string, right? If it is a string, then you can say it is a collection of character. But if you are having a collection of string means what is the individual element? Individual element is nothing but a string. Na? So from Pranay, what you can reduce? From Pranay, you can identify P is a character, R is a character, A is a character. But if I'm showing you these things, right? If I'm showing you these things, then what individual element you can access from here? You can identify CS is a value, Java is a value, and C++ is a value. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right. That is what you
Here,
yeah.
here instead of enumerable string, if I put enumerable character, so what will be the output here? Yeah,
In this case,
that place.
you will get
Yeah.
some compilation error.
So
Why?
is it only one level of decoding, sir, or can we, like, suppose if in this case from object to string
See,
it is converting, and from
see,
string character?
you okay, okay, just okay, you just tell. Okay, you just tell me. From std, this std, what it contains?
It's a
std
list of
contains the
object.
student object.
Std contains the
We
student
can do a
object,
collection of students.
right? Collect std means individually it will select one student, right? Then I'm writing std.programs. Let's assume that our collection contain only one student. Let's assume that only the student is there, right? Then from the student, whenever I'm writing std.programming, what it return?
It will return a
List of
collection of
strings.
On that property within the collection of students programming.
No, std.programming for that particular student, what is the programming value? In this case, what is
collection
the
of strings.
programming value? It is a collection of string. So if it is a collection of string, then from collection of string, how you can access individual elements? If you are having this,
For each loop.
okay, let me show you this thing. So that list of string, right? So this is my collection of string, right? So if I'm using a for each loop here, right? Then this item will represent what? This item will represent what? Individual element of this collection of string or not? Individual element means CS is one element, Java is one element, and C++ is one element or not? Yes, or no? Right. So in this case, why? Because it is returning a collection of elements. Coming to this part, this str means what value? This string value? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Let assume that it contains only this element, right? Then in that case, this str means what are the element available in this collection. In this collection, Pranay is available. That means str now referring to Pranay. So from each element of this Pranay means what? So in this case, if I'm using a for each loop, right? And if I'm using a for each loop, and let me, so this is a string value. So string str equals to this value, right? So if I'm using a for each loop, then what this item will identify? This item type variable is of which type? Can anybody tell me? In this case, what is the type of this variable? You can say string, because this collection of string contains a collection of string. But in this case, this str contains a string. Then what should be the type of this item? How you can access individual element of this string? For accessing individual element, what data type you need? You need a character data type or not? So if you move your mouse pointer over item, you can see it is a character. The same thing is here also. Clear, guys? So you just need to understand what this sequence contains. In this case, the sequence contains collection of strings. So collection of string means each string is a collection of a character. So it will form a collection of a character as a result. So in this case, what this collection contains. This collection contains a list of students. From this list of students, what this programming property contains. This programming property contains what? This programming property contains list of strings. Then it will form a list of string. Now, okay, to make you more better understanding what I'm trying, I'm using name property here. Right? I'm using student.name property. So in this case, what will happen? So in this case, you will get some compilation error. Why? Because this name, okay, from this student, I'm selecting the name property. This name property is a type of what type? It's a list of string or it's a string? This
String.
name, it's a string. So if it's a string, then this program or this program or whatever we have written here, he will access individual element of that property. Yes or no? In this case, the individual element are nothing but one character or not?
Yes. Good.
So in this case, you need to use what type here? You need to use char. If I'm writing programming, then what is the element? What is the individual element this programming is storing? The programming here storing the individual element are nothing but one string. So here you need to project the output to some type of string. And if I'm using here, okay, let me create a different output for syntax 2. Here I'm writing name. Okay, so here I'm writing name and here I'm writing name and here I'm selecting the name. So in this case, it is going to be character. So difference is that here programming means it's a collection of string. So the individual element is string. Here name means it's a string. The individual element is collection of characters. Clear? Or still you have any doubt?
Clear. Thank you.
Guys, is that clear? Because yeah, people are getting confused between this SelectMany. And I hope you guys understand what exactly the meaning of this SelectMany. If you go with this method syntax, then it will be a little bit difficult for you to understand, right? But functionality, both are going to do the same thing. But to understand this concept, the query syntax is best, right? So that's it for today. Tomorrow we are going to discuss few more important concepts, right? And if anybody wants to leave the session, they can leave. But the person who is asking that memory architecture, and if anyone else wants to know how exactly the memory architecture happening in .NET framework, then they can stay here. Okay, so let me explain you. So this is one of the employee object, right? Is employee object. So whenever you create one object, right, each object having some base address, right? Let me give this base address as this one. Right? This is the base address, right? So suppose this employee having some properties called ID. This employee having some properties called name, right? Also having some other properties. Other properties. Clear? And here, okay, so this employee. So I have created an instance of an employee class here. emp equals to new emp employee object. Then once I create an instance, so this emp, it is a reference variable, and this is the actual object. So in that case, what will happen in the memory, right? So emp will be created here. Okay, let me. Name of this variable is, it is going to be emp, and what it will hold the value 1000. What is the base address of this object? That is going to be held by this variable, right? So you can say like this. Clear? See, So this is how the memory architecture is done for the EMP object, right? If it is if you are creating employee object, means one reference variable will be created, and this reference variable will be created here, and that reference variable will pointing to the actual object, right? Then and this is fine, right? You can access the name, ID name, and some other properties using emp.id, means whatever the value stored here, right? So suppose, okay, let me give you one better idea. Let me remove that one here, remove that one here, right? So let me give this memory location as ID. Let me give this memory location as name. Suppose you are creating the object, and while creating the object, you are assigning, okay, what is the ID and first name. Suppose I'm assigning ID equals to 100 and first name equals to some name, right? So let me rename this as name, right? So let me first name is there. Let me create another property with a value name. So you should not have any query, right? So ID property and some other property. So what will happen? ID is this and name equals to this value. So what will happen in the memory? It will store 100 here. It will store the value 100 here. And what is the value from name you assign, that will be stored here, right? That value will be stored here, and some other properties, right? Some other properties, if you are happy, those values will be stored here. And what is the base address? The base address is 1001, that will be stored inside this EMP variable. But if you look at this class also having the course entity, right? So this course entity means another object will be created. For that purpose, this is another object is going to be created. And what is the value of that object? Let me show you. The base address is this one, and this course entity having some property. Okay, currently it is having the ID property. So this object will be created with the ID property, right? ID property. If you store some value, then that value will be stored, right? And if you do not store any value, then what is the default value that will be stored, right? And then this is fine. Okay, let me remove this one from here. ID property is there, right? And this is the base address. Now, the course property, what is the name? The name is course. So in this case, right? So in this case, course property is also going to be created, right? In this case, the course property is also going to be created, but this course property will hold the value. What value it will hold? It will hold the value 2000, which is pointing to this memory location, right? So the memory location is going to be created like this. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir. But my intention was to create only the employee object. Let's say in the employee class, I have 10 fields. In the course also, I am having the 10 fields.
Sorry,
But the
yeah, so
yeah,
if your employee class having 10 field and course is also having 10 fields, right? Then apart
yeah.
inside this employee, course is also a field, right?
Yeah, course is also field. But my intention, I want to create only object for an employee. Let's say I want to retrieve only the employee details, not
Yeah,
on a
so
course
so
details.
in that case, if you are creating employee, then you just tell me. Suppose if ID name is there, if I'm not assigning the value for the first name and last name properties, then what will be the default value?
It will be null. It's a string. It will be null.
And for reference, so it's not string, but for reference type, the value is going to be null. So if you go to the definition of string, so it's a class. For any type, okay, for any class type, the default value is going to be null, right? Suppose you are creating an employee instance, then at that time, if you are not initializing this property, right, then this course property value, right, it is definitely going to be created, but it is going to be created with what value? It is going to be created with null value.
Okay.
Right.
So then there will be no bytes will be allocated, right?
No,
so
no,
if it is
no.
null,
So it's a null. Then how memory allocation will be there? Once you create the object, then only the memory allocation will be there, right? And for creating object, two things is required. What are the things is required? One is new operator, another one is constructor, right? The new operator will allocate the memory location, right? How much size is required, right? That memory allocation will be done by this new operator, and this is nothing but your constructor who is going to initialize those memory locations, right? So initialize those memory location means if your class, right? Suppose, for example, in this case, this employee class having how many fields? So these are the fields. So based on these fields, right, the memory allocation will be the initialization things is going to be happening. If you are assigning some value, that value will be stored, right? If you are not assigning, right, then the default value is going to be stored. But the memory,
will be reserved for reserved, right? For
sorry.
Whenever I was creating new using whenever I was trying to create an object for an employee class, the memory allocation will be reserved for the course also, right? Even though we are using or not.
So for that you need to understand two things. So in this case, this ID name any property, for individual property, it will allocate memory based on the data type, right? But for
Yes.
but for here, what is this EMP is going to hold? It is going to hold some memory location address, right?
Yeah, correct.
And that memory location address in .NET framework, you take any memory location. For that memory location, it will allocate 2 bytes of memory. So here, so this is happening also. This is also happening. Don't think that it will not take some memory. So for this EMP variable, it will allocate 2 bytes of memory, and inside this 2 bytes of memory, it will store the base address of this object. Similarly, for course, it will allocate 2 bytes of memory here. And in that memory, it will store null. And whenever you create an instance of the course, based on the data type, right, based on the number of variables, property, whatever you created, that memory allocation will be done separately, right? And that address will be stored here. And storing the address, you need 2 bytes of memory, and that is going to be allocated while you are creating the instance. Clear?
Oh, okay, I got it.
Clear, guys? Yeah. So that's it for today. We'll see tomorrow again.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.